This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
Hello there and welcome to Global Business Africa. We'll be giving you insight into Africa's business and financial markets. I'm Uche Okoronkwo, coming to you from Kenya's capital, Nairobi. Let's start with a look at the markets. Now, emerging market stocks broke their second longest run of losses ever as positive trade data out of China, which also signaled curbing a slide in its yuan currency, gave investors some relief after this week's rout. Now, positive day in Africa's key markets as well. The Egyptian exchange, it saw its indices all climbing higher today, pushed by purchases of Arab and foreign institutions, as well as investment of funds. The EGX 30 was up over 2% on the day, successfully pushing above that 14,000 point level. Now, also coming up on the show today, business confidence in South Africa drops to its lowest in 4 months over political uncertainty. Zimbabwe concludes an agreement to import an additional electricity from South Africa's Eskom. And the growing trend of natural hair in Africa breeds business opportunities in Ghana. Well, let's kick off the show in South Africa, where the country's business confidence fell to its lowest level in nearly 4 months in July. This as concerns over political uncertainty and state company finances outweighed the positive effects of lower interest rates and higher commodity prices. Well, CGTN's Angelo Coppola has been following this and now joins us in Johannesburg with the details. Great to have you on the show, Angelo, as always. Now, another disappointing drop in business confidence, suddenly highlighting South Africa's business community's growing frustration with the government. Now, the Chamber of Commerce and Industry, it pointed to a divided ruling party impacting the government's efficiency. Give us a sense, Angelo, of the key frustrations impacting confidence in the country right now.
Which at the moment it's all about a lack of action from government. Meetings are being held, there are press conferences and press briefings that are happening, documents are getting signed, committees are getting established, but there's no apparent action that is visible. We got a glimpse, for example, into the President's program earlier this week. There were 4 meetings in it. 3 of them were with government departments or government officials, and 1 was with a group of prominent economists. Last week, social partners met to talk about an employment report that's nearly a year old, but again, no discernible action was taken. Eskom is another case in point. It's taken 7 months to appoint a restructuring boss to break up that business, but again, no action, and no plan has been forthcoming either. And these frustrations, I'm told, are manifesting themselves partially in a weakened currency, Uche.
Well, Angelo, there is some positive news coming out of the country, though. We did see the country's first increase in employment in 6 months. The number of employed South Africans rose by about 87,000 in the 4th quarter of this year. So is this a positive sign for the country's employment outlook going forward?
Uche, I hate to be a damn squid here, but at 29% and climbing, the unemployment numbers aren't looking in good shape at all. That small change is considered a blip by many analysts. That's based on the fact that there's a muted economic growth number that's being forecast by everyone from the Central Reserve Bank all the way down to business banking in this country. And without growth, there can't be increased employment. We heard yesterday, for example, from a deputy governor at the Reserve Bank that for every 30,000 new tourists that visit the country, there's 1 permanent job created and 2 temporary jobs that happen. That's an easy fix, he was saying, provided that tourists can visit the country unhindered. The positive signs that business people are looking for are action. And a prime example is the engine room of any economy. That's the small business sector. And at the moment, it's fairly stagnant because there's a new minister in place and they're getting used to how she operates. That's the bureaucracy and the bureaucrats that are operating there. So that's going to be on hold for a couple of months possibly until we start seeing some action there. That new political head is sort of holding things back. But the next labour market survey will be instructive in terms of whether there's increased employment and whether it was a blip or not. So we're going to have to wait and see for that one, Uche.
Right. Well, looking at the performance in different sectors, it is sort of a mixed bag. Manufacturing production surprisingly saw its first contraction in 9 months, while we saw mining production rebounding in the second quarter of this year. So what does this performance mean for the country's growth outlook?
Well, Uche, it is a mixed bag. We got confirmation of another drop from a different source. Stats SA is saying that the industrial production decreased by some 3.2% in June. That's a year-on-year figure, and was down 1.5% month-on-month. So not good news there. A currency trader, FXTM, is telling me that while this disappointing report certainly strengthens the case for the SARB to possibly cut interest rates, there's a scepter or possibility that rising inflation could become an obstacle, so that might not happen. The mine production data is a small pocket of positive news. It's good news, but not enough yet to revise those growth forecasts up. In fact, just yesterday, Nedbank dropped its growth forecast for the country from 1.3% to 0.5%. So it's not a good news story at the moment, and it points to a lack of confidence in some cabinet members and ministers, and also, more importantly, business want to see the president step up and get hands-on involved in driving this economy. Uche?
All right. Well, as always, many thanks, Angelo, for your insights. Of course, that's Angelo Coppola joining us there in Johannesburg. Now, moving on, the government of Zimbabwe says it has reached an agreement with the South African state utility firm Eskom to import an additional 400 megawatts of power starting this week. Now, under the deal, the Southern African nation will also pay weekly installments of about $890,000, and that's towards the settlement of its current debt to the electricity supplier. CGTN's Farai Mwakutuya explains.
There's light at the end of the tunnel for beleaguered business people for whom day had turned to night. Some financial engineering has restored power imports that had been stopped over non-payment. Authorities are hoping to secure more.
Working with the mining sector, we have been able to ring-fence adequate resources to pay for at least 400 megawatts of electricity per month. But we are then engaging the other supplier as well to try and see whether we can put into place a similar structure.
The supplements still won't fully bridge a deficit that's set to worsen as water levels at Kariba Dam reach chronically low levels.
We were hit hard in Kariba, which used to produce close to 700 megawatts. It's now down to 250 megawatts because of the drought. So it means that the shortfall we have to import.
The power utility says it might be forced to stop pumping water at the recently refurbished station by October if water levels continue dropping. While the ongoing crisis has been attributed to the drought, blame has also been pinned on the scant investment made in the sector in recent years. Existing power stations are old and produce only a fraction of what they are meant to, while other major projects have been slow to come on stream. There have been calls for restructuring the sector.
You hear statistics to say ZESA is owed over 1.2 billion by its customers, and you ask yourself a very standard question: which business would continue to supply goods to its customers who are not paying? So it means there's a whole lot of inefficiencies surrounding our ZESA utility providers.
Power tariffs were recently raised threefold, but even after the increase, Zimbabweans are still paying significantly lower than other consumers in the region. A misnomer that could lead to yet more viability challenges for the sector. Farai Mwakutuya, CGTN, Harare, Zimbabwe.
Well, let's head to South Sudan now. The country says it has boosted oil production by 6,000 barrels, bringing its oil output to over 180,000 barrels per day. Now, the country's petroleum ministry says increased oil production will provide badly needed funds for services in the country. CGTN's Patrick Oyet reports.
For years, this field was closed due to insecurity, but now the Manga oil field has resumed production in these areas. That has given South Sudan a much-needed boost for its economy, which is heavily dependent on oil. More than 98% of the country's budget comes from the resource.
We know that South Sudan has a lot of opportunities that are still yet to be developed, especially in regards to energy security. And energy security is key, and it is number one. For us to talk about energy security, we talk about refining. When we talk about refining, it means that we can develop other sectors using fuel directly.
The government hopes to further increase production, setting a target of 200,000 barrels a day by the end of this year.
South Sudan's government hopes by increasing oil production, it will be able to raise money that would be required for the implementation of the peace deal.
Security has improved in South Sudan since the agreement was signed. Experts say if peace holds, the economy could get back on track.
We believe with the production of oil, which is currently ongoing, the exchange rate is going to stabilize. And since oil is the only product that is contributing hugely into the GDP of this country, the resumption of oil production will actually stabilize the economy and we'll see exchange rates coming down.
The government says it is now ready for international investment.
South Sudan is becoming more secure, and the peace implementation also is in progress, which will help us also to attract more investors to South Sudan, whether in the upstream or in the downstream. And as we do that, our banking system, our financial system will also improve as we attract a lot of investors on an equal basis.
The country's civil war, which began in 2013, led to a sharp decline in oil production. By 2014, South Sudan was producing fewer than 130,000 barrels per day. That led to soaring inflation and economic stagnation. So, as the country continues to recover from years of turmoil, the reopening of oil fields is bringing renewed hope. Patrick Oyet, CGTN, Altor Oilfield, South Sudan.
And now look at some of our corporate headlines today. Standard Bank is considering entering new markets, possibly through acquisitions. Now, Africa's largest bank by assets has strategically focused its resources on Africa, ruling out further cross-border expansion as it continues working to become a global emerging markets lender. And a Kenyan parliamentary committee has recommended that the government should reject KCB Group's acquisition of the majority state-owned National Bank of Kenya. The lawmakers say that National Bank should instead raise capital by selling additional shares. And U.S. courier delivery company FedEx has confirmed it will terminate its contract with Amazon as the online retailer focuses on building out its own delivery network. Amazon has been expanding its own delivery network of planes, trucks, and vans, and is now seen as posing a potential long-term challenge to FedEx and rival United Parcel Service. And German sportswear company Adidas has reported disappointing second quarter sales as its shares fell 2.3%. However, it expects a recovery in the second half after it stemmed a decline in Europe and saw its long-struggling Reebok brand recover. And that's a look at our corporate headlines. Well, we're heading into a short break now. Here's a look at what's still to come. Nigeria's state-run oil firm to partner with Dangote for the construction of an oil refinery. And Gambia rolls out new currency without the portrait of former President Yahya Jammeh.
The world economy as we know it is about to change. Global business reports highlight emerging markets, developing countries, and dynamic sectors worldwide. We feature top analysts and newsmakers to provide perspectives on every facet of business. From an on-the-ground perspective, we provide you with balanced and objective assessments. Fast, sharp, and insightful. Global business. Only on CGTN.
Every story starts out like this.
Okay. We'll head up now.
But beyond the rush of the numbers, there's always a more fundamental question. What happened? Who has been affected? When market-moving decisions are made, who's responsible and why?
some reaction on ground. Joining us in Johannesburg is Sutra. Hello, Nairobi.
This is how all stories begin. See how they end. Only on Global Business.
Welcome back. Well, let's head to Nigeria. The country's state-run oil firm plans to partner with a new private refinery under construction on the shores of Lagos. Now, the aim is to ink a deal with the refinery, which is part of a blueprint to transform the Nigerian National Petroleum Corporation into a world-class state oil company, as well as a fuel supplier. With the details, here's CGTN's Daniel Arab Moy.
At the moment, Nigeria is dusting off a plan to double its oil production by 2025. Diving into this ambitious strategy is the country's state oil company. NNPC is eyeing to partner with a new private refinery under construction on the shores of Lagos. This is as it hopes to turn Nigeria into a fuel supplier.
When we produce, there's a market for it, either here within the West African sub-region, or beyond it, and the product market is there. So we know this. So we do this, we can now satisfy local needs and also possibly export products.
The refinery, being built by billionaire Aliko Dangote, will have a capacity of nearly 650,000 barrels per day, and NNPC wants a piece of it. For years, NNPC's opaque practices and scandals have tarnished its reputation. However, now things seem to be turning around for the company. Under its new managing director, the Nigerian National Petroleum Corporation is working to transform into a world-class state oil company.
I think what we need to do is the most important thing we need to do is to improve on the legislative framework. Yeah, that's very critical for every investor. And beyond that, you do need to focus on some form of accountability and transparency that our partners are looking forward to. The world is looking forward to that.
The new Dangote refinery is big news for Nigeria, which currently imports nearly all its refined products. But one of the key issues that's holding it back is its petroleum industries bill, which has been dragging on for almost 2 decades now.
There are a number of investment decisions that cannot be made now because investors are wary of the fiscal environment. And once we sort out the fiscal issues and the commercial issues around those transactions, I believe that we can easily go back to investment and then grow the production and the result to that level that we're looking at.
Without this petroleum industries bill, the oil-producing country's foreign interest will be stymied. But if passed, it will ultimately set the tone for Nigeria's entire oil industry. Daniel Arab Moy, CGTN.
And Gambia's government has rolled out new currency notes replacing the old dalasi. The new currency's main feature is one of Gambia's national birds, replacing the portrait of long-serving President Yahya Jammeh. The former president was forced into exile in January 2017 after 22 years in power. Now, his legacy is rife with stories of extrajudicial killings, rape and torture, forced disappearances and high-profile deaths.
Oh yes, customers are excited that the country has introduced new banknotes, and so they were coming in asking for new notes. And I think so many people are happy so far.
I think it's important to remove Jammeh from the new notes, because my idea is I don't think any president's picture should be on a note, on a banknote. No.
Money is for the people. This time I hope that the Gambians can have a typical Gambian currency which does not symbolize the president or any other person.
And the European Union has granted Tunisia $44.7 million in funding to support its fisheries and aquaculture sector. The bloc's latest financial resources are also set to contribute to the development and the improvement of several low-income districts in the North African economy. CGTN's Adnan Shaushi with the details.
The European Union granted Tunisia a donation of $44.7 million, around 120 million dinars, to support the fisheries sector and help develop popular neighborhoods.
There are over 40 fishing ports in Tunisia, but the infrastructure is not adapted to the fishing activity. Some of the ports are old and need modern equipment to meet the growing demand from professionals.
The two agreements were signed in Tunis by the Ministry of Development, Investment and International Cooperation and the French Development Agency, which is in charge of implementing the project in Tunisia.
The second agreement will enable work to be carried out on the second phase of the planning program for the working class neighborhoods. It will benefit 146 neighborhoods, including 7 areas in the coastal governorate of Nabil.
The Minister of Agriculture, Water Resources and Fisheries noted that Tunisia aims to become one of the leading exporters of fishery products in the Mediterranean basin.
Tunisia opens up widely onto the sea. The value added of the fisheries sector registered a significant increase of 11.9% in the second quarter of 2019. Tunisia will work with all its partners to boost export and improve working conditions for fishermen.
According to the National Institute of Statistics, the fishing industry in Tunisia employs over 100,000 people in more than 10 different coastal cities. This vital sector represents nearly 10% of the country's agricultural exports, especially to Europe and Asia. Aden Shawashi, CGTN, Tunis.
Now, global visual communications firm Getty Images, in partnership with APO Group, is set to promote integrated text, photo and video solutions to companies operating across Africa. The strategic partnership is the first of its kind on the continent. It will help organizations connect their compelling stories with new audiences.
The partnership was informed by us doing a strategic review of our footprint in different markets, and we absolutely found that there were big gaps in Africa and a lot of opportunity. But for us to scale into that market sort of directly, we really needed a partner, and APO were that partner. Constantly, we're looking at partnerships and we're looking at potential acquisitions. But I would say we've also done a lot of work around new products and services. So we are working with a lot of platforms now with API integrations from a technology point of view, so plugging into the ecosystem of a company. So the Getty Images is within their system as opposed to having to come to Getty Images directly. We've done over 300 API integrations this year with companies that probably actually wouldn't have been able to license from Getty Images in the traditional way.
And let's head to Ethiopia now, where the China Communications Construction Company has officially commenced construction work on the country's project to beautify the capital, Addis Ababa. Now, the project is expected to clean, conserve and give a facelift to the riverside of Addis Ababa. CCCC will begin by conducting work on 3 square kilometers of riverside land. CGTN's Gerum Chala has more.
The Beautifying Shega project is part of a wider plan to clean the heavily polluted rivers in the Ethiopian capital. Out of the 52 kilometers of that project, the China-based CCCC construction company will contribute and work on the 12 kilometers.
The CCCC and other Chinese businesses have contributed a lot to the local economic growth and prosperity of the Ethiopian society. We want to work closer with and contribute more to the development of infrastructure, such as the riverside projects, so that we can add more to the China-Ethiopia friendship.
Immediately after the launch of the Beautifying Shega project, the whole country had given it an overwhelming support, and this idea of Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed has managed to get a global attention too. China, though, made the largest pledge of it all. It will build 12 kilometers of the whole project free of charge.
China has given grants to many African states this year. This is apart from the usual project investment we already know. We remember the continent-wide grant given in the form of the building of the African Union headquarters. And now China has allocated a huge sum of money to support the Riverside project. This grant is a sign of an ever stronger relationship between our two countries.
Now that the much-anticipated project is coming to a reality, CCCC has started mixing sand, cement and water to build parks, walkways and landmarks. This has excited Addis Ababa residents.
This is truly exciting. When you look at the rivers of our city, even the one behind me, the pollution and smell are unbearable. The project ongoing will fix all that. We will have parks and above all, it will allow us to live a better life.
This is great for the beauty of the city, to improve our neighborhoods. It will attract more tourists, whether from within the country or outside the country. It is a wonderful time for the young generation to live in.
The China Communications Construction Company is expected to finish its share of the river land development by April 2020. Already, excitements are high to eventually see the full finalization of the beautifying sugar project in just a few years' time. Group Jala CGTN, Addis Ababa, Ethiopia.
And here in Kenya, the 6th season of the Africa Tech Challenge is underway. This year's challenge has generated a lot of interest, with 7 teams from across Africa taking part. Now, winners receive cash prizes and scholarships to top universities in China. The challenge, part of a training program by AVIC International, helps equip young people with manufacturing skills. Here's CGTN's Robert Nagila reporting.
At a workshop at the Technical University of Kenya, Divine Bedzra from Ghana and his team are training on a computer numerical machine.
Work with codings, and I think for 2 weeks, if you are able to input a program and you are able to machine, then I think the program has been so successful.
His team is part of 17 others, including participants from Kenya, Ghana, Gabon, Ethiopia, Ivory Coast, Zambia and Uganda, taking part in the 6th edition of the Africa Tech Challenge. ATC is a youth empowerment project established in 2014, which equips participants with technical skills through a training program. At the end of the program, a competition is held and the winners awarded a fully sponsored master's degree scholarship to prestigious universities in China and cash prizes. Lei Biao, who is in charge of the training, says despite a few challenges, the students have impressed.
There have been some challenges with the language barrier, but the trainees have come in during their free time and are doing very well.
Those taking part say they're impressed with the skills and knowledge acquired so far.
Okay, the progress is good. We've learned very many manufacturing skills we did not know before.
The one thing I hope to gain is the skills so that I can go back home and share the knowledge.
The program by AVIC, a Chinese company that's been in Kenya for the last 2 decades, is a partnership with the Ministry of Education on vocational training. It entails commissioning, installing and equipping of public technical training institutions with mechanical, electrical and electronic equipment. At the end, all participants will receive certificates to allow them access internships and job opportunities. Robert Nagila, CGTN, Nairobi, Kenya.
You're watching Global Business Africa. Let's take a quick break. Still to come. Chinese tech giant Huawei to continue challenging the constitutionality of the latest American ban. And tension remains high in the Gulf oil route following a tanker attack.
Business in Africa is at the crossroads. We celebrate those who are adopting and thriving despite the challenges. from grassroots to big businesses. Global Business takes you along for the ride as we track the making of a giant. Only on CGTN.
Economic data out of the country. The country's foreign currency reserves.
With a dedicated and diverse team of anchors, CGTN now brings Africa to the palm of your hand.
I'm Perina Karibe in the heart of Nairobi, which is bustling.
From everyday heroes to the continent's most powerful figures, we bring their voices to you.
We haven't changed. And this is something most of us are very excited about.
We bring you news that's changing perspectives.
I'm Uche Okoronkwo reporting from Nairobi's city center.
News that brings Africa to the world. CGTN. See the difference.
Just about 1:30, let's recap today's top headlines. The United Nations Top Climate Panel is calling for more action to curb global warming and reduce strain on the planet's resources. In a major report, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change warns the world's food security is at risk. That's unless humans change how they manage land and produce and consume food. The report urges bold action to avoid more disruption to global food chains as extreme weather becomes more frequent due to climate change. And South Africa has published its draft National Health Insurance Bill. The bill creating an NHI fund paves the way for a comprehensive overhaul of South Africa's health system that would be one of the biggest policy changes since the ruling African National Congress ended white minority rule in 1994. Now, according to a senior official, universal health care for millions of poorer citizens would cost about $16.89 billion to implement by 2022. And South Sudan says it has boosted oil production by 6,000 barrels, bringing its oil output to over 180,000 barrels per day. The country's petroleum ministry says increased oil production will provide badly needed funds for services in the country. And scores of migrants on board a Spanish rescue ship are still waiting for clearance to dock in European waters. No country has so far offered to receive the migrants. The ship is currently near Lampedusa. The 121 migrants from different nations were rescued from the Mediterranean waters over a week ago. But they've been stranded for the last 7 days. And of course, some were fleeing the ongoing conflict in Libya. And that's a recap of today's top headlines. Now, Chinese tech giant Huawei says it will continue to challenge the constitutionality of the latest American ban. Now, on Wednesday, the U.S. issued an interim regulation formally banning 5 Chinese companies, including Huawei, from government contracts. The new rule, which is set to take effect next Tuesday, prohibits any American federal agencies from purchasing telecom or technology equipment from the firms. The latest ban comes amid a heated dispute between the world's top 2 economic powers over international trade rules, which some analysts are saying could roil the global economic system. Now, it's been nearly 3 months since the first tanker attack rocked trade in the Gulf's crucial oil transit route. Now, tensions in the region still show little signs of letting up as Iran continues to seize a British-flagged ship. Here's CGTN's Jacob Greaves explaining what impacts these attacks have had so far.
The UK has now pledged to join America in policing the Strait of Hormuz. It comes as waters in the Gulf have become synonymous with scenes like this. 2 separate attacks on tankers in the region in recent months. The US claims Tehran is involved. Iran still denies responsibility. But whoever's to blame, companies looking to use the crucial oil transit route are faced with increasing risk.
Insurance premiums has definitely been the huge factor to impact the maritime sector as of now because of the various incidents. And following the June incident where the 2 tankers were attacked in the Gulf of Oman, the premiums shot up by almost 10% overnight just following the incident. And after the recent events, including the Stena Impero, where the maritime security has been enhanced and the perceived threat has enhanced, the quotes for, say, VLCC coming into the region has been in the range of about $100,000 for a 7-day transit in the Gulf.
But in waterways linking Middle East oil producers with international buyers, there's more at stake. As a Gulf oil exporter, the UAE is exposed to any disruptions to freedom of navigation in the region, but it could be impacted in other ways as well. In Fujairah, it has one of the world's top bunkering hubs. Protracted heightened tensions here risk shippers turn to other refuelling ports. Providing ship fuel for passing tankers is big business for Fujairah, but it was just off its coast that back in May this happened. The first incident in the region involving 4 tankers. Analysts point to a resulting dent in business.
The biggest impact really has been on the demand for bunkers down in Fujairah. It saw a sizable drop-off immediately after the attacks, and it's picked up a little bit since then. That's probably down to the fact that geographically Fujairah is the best placed bunkering hub in the region.
Offer have been sizable. Refinitiv data suggests at times as much as $45 per metric tonne cheaper than in rival Singapore.
Unless there is some reassurance that the Fujairah government or whoever the powers that may be to steady things down in Fujairah at the moment, then I think over the course of time, I think owners will reposition. They won't regard Fujairah as being a bunkering hub as secure as it used to be, and it will have an adverse effect on the region in general.
Iran has threatened to close the Strait of Hormuz if it can't trade oil in line with a nuclear pact reached in 2015. This week, the US and Saudi Arabian energy ministers expressed their concern at any threat to freedom of navigation. Images like this could cast a shadow over oil markets for some time. Jacob Greaves, CGTN in Dubai.
Now, China, the United States and 44 other nations have signed the Singapore Convention on Mediation. This agreement is aimed at settling cross-border commercial disputes. It has been named after the Southeast Asian city-state for its efforts in drafting and negotiating the treaty. Here's CGTN's Miro Liu reporting.
A landmark event for dispute resolution as 46 United Nations members signed an international treaty on commercial mediation. To be known as the Singapore Convention on Mediation, it aims to boost international trade and give businesses greater certainty by helping parties resolve cross-border disputes through the process of mediation. This means that a neutral party can help the two sides reach an agreement in a less confrontational manner, instead of long-drawn and expensive legal battles. During his formal address, Singapore Prime Minister Lee Hsien Loong called it a breakthrough which will benefit businesses, providing them with greater flexibility and efficiency.
The Singapore Convention on Mediation is the missing third piece in the international dispute resolution enforcement framework. Businesses will benefit from greater flexibility, efficiency, and lower costs, while states can enhance access to justice by facilitating the enforcement of mediated agreements.
The United Nations representative Stephen Mathias termed the treaty as innovative, adding that it will ensure the global acceptance of mediation as a dispute settlement mechanism.
Uncertainty surrounding the enforcement of settlement agreements had been identified as a main obstacle to the greater use of mediation. The Convention sets the standards for enforcing and invoking settlement agreements, the requirements for reliance on settlement agreements, and the grounds for refusing to grant relief.
Dispute resolution experts echoed Mathias' sentiments, saying that the convention will promote the use of mediation, especially in Asian countries, where it has existed as a means of settlement method for centuries.
You know, I am very optimistic about the future of mediation. I think it's tremendously impressive that we had so many signatories to the convention on its opening day. This augurs well for the future of that enactment and also general support for the concept of mediated settlement agreements.
Having the UN treaty named after Singapore cemented the Republic's reputation as a haven for international dispute resolution. During the Singapore Convention Week, apart from the signing ceremony today, the International Insolvency Federation opened its first office outside of London for the first time, and an international dispute complex, the Maxwell Chambers Suites, is also scheduled to open. Miro Lu, CGTN, Singapore.
Now, China's largest rice importers will be shipping in Sun Valley's California CalRose rice and distributing it for both retail and food services. This is amid the ongoing trade tensions between China and the U.S. More than 36,000 kilos of the product are headed for China by the end of September. CGTN's Mark New has the story.
In California's Sacramento Valley, Sun Valley Rice Company has made a breakthrough. It's about to become the first U.S. company ever to sell rice to China. One of China's largest rice importers, Dragon Ocean Hing Group, will be bringing in Sun Valley's California CalRose rice and distributing it for both retail and food service.
My great-grandparents moved here and bought this property a little over 100 years ago.
Rice farmer and Sun Valley CEO Ken LeGrand has worked these fields since he was a child.
These are some of the very first ones, and they're it'll just explode in about 5 days. We're just about a week before we can find any sort of juice. That's going to be a rice kernel right there.
LeGrand says the historic deal is the result of 15 years of hard work and patience.
We're just awfully excited to be the first American company to sell American rice into China. Our company has been working really, really diligently for the last several years, going to China, meeting with potential buyers, and that's really what it takes, is the ability to go to China and understand how important the traditions of rice are.
The rice plants in these fields will be harvested in early September. By the end of September, more than 36,000 kilos of the product will be shipped to Shenzhen, China. Part of what impressed Chinese importers is Sun Valley's quality control. Probes collect grain samples from every delivery so that workers can check for damage or impurities by hand. They also measure the precise moisture level of the grains. Sun Valley says if the first shipment to China works out, more business will likely follow. Sun Valley also buys from other growers about 10% of the California rice crop, so the deal could benefit the entire industry.
Trade between the U.S. and China is at a really critical point in our view. The humble dish of rice can be part of what opens that door a little further and starts the flow of trade between our two countries, then we're very proud to be part of that historic moment.
Also a proud moment for a family that's been growing rice for 5 generations.
It really is surprising to me to think about how when I was 10 years old and I was riding with my grandfather on a tractor, never thinking that someday I would be producing a crop and being the first rice to go to China.
Mark New, CGTN, Williams, California.
Meanwhile, U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo says the Trump administration will pursue a free trade agreement with Britain as soon as the country leaves the European Union. While speaking at a news conference in Washington, he added the administration remains committed to respecting Britain's decision on Brexit. In attendance was the visiting British Foreign Secretary Dominic Raab and his first visit to Washington in that position.
We support the United Kingdom's sovereign choice. However, Brexit ultimately shakes out, and we'll be on the doorstep, pen in hand, ready to sign a new free trade agreement at the earliest possible time.
This government, this cabinet, is absolutely resolved, determined to leave the EU by the end of October. We will stay good friends and good neighbours with our European partners. But we are at the same time determined to seize the global opportunities beyond Europe for the United Kingdom. And of course, America is our single largest bilateral trading partner. President Trump has made clear again that he wants an ambitious free trade agreement with the UK. So I hope we can make that happen as soon as possible after we leave the EU on the 31st of October. I think if the EU's position is that there can be no change to the withdrawal agreement, then that will be a choice that they've made, and that makes it very difficult to see how we can move the negotiations forward. But from the UK's side, we will strive every sinew to find and secure a deal, if it's possible, under terms that would be acceptable to the UK, and the Prime Minister has talked about that a little bit. I think also should be clear that in any no-deal scenario, we'll do whatever it takes to avoid any hard border between the North and the Republic. And I would also point out that our view is that the withdrawal agreement, as currently configured, is a threat to the Good Friday Agreement itself. So that's where we are right now.
And still in the U.S., dozens of Walmart employees walked out at a facility in Northern California to protest the retailer's gun policies. The employees who took part in the walkout called for the world's largest retailer to cease the sale of guns and ammunition, claiming it has played a significant role in the mass tragedies across the country. Now, Walmart sells guns in almost half of its 4,750 U.S. stores, making it one of the largest retailers of firearms and ammunition. The call to action follows the gruesome incident that left 22 people killed and dozens wounded at a Walmart store in El Paso after a gunman opened fire.
This isn't about, any one person. This is a bigger thing, and this is about the lives lost, specifically the lives of, people of color, the lives that are targeted by specifically hatred and misogyny, which are largely the targets of most of these mass shootings we've been having. Our goals are to get Walmart to stop the sale of all guns and ammunition, to get Walmart to publicly acknowledge that the role that selling guns and ammunition has played in the mass tragedies we've had. Additionally, to stop the Walmart wall pack from donating to any members of the NRA members of Congress or politicians that have an A+ rating, an A or A+ rating from the NRA, as well as to really to also ban the open or concealed carry of weapons in Walmart stores or on Walmart property.
Well, let's shift our attention now to Switzerland, where scholars have created a robot which can teach itself to walk, roller skate, and even ice skate. SkaterBot was developed at one of the world's leading universities in science and tech, ETH Zurich. The robot is capable of performing a complex number of moves using its agile legs and utilizes artificial intelligence tech. Now, parts of it are 3D printed in what Assistant Professor Stelion Koros has called Lego for scientists. The innovation aims to cater to the search and rescue missions along with delivery of parcels.
So this robot figured out how to do rollerblading motions without us having to program it, or without us having to tell it what a rollerblade is or have it watch videos of people do it. And so this for us was a test to see if we create a robot that no one else has created before, if it is able to figure out how to move in an appropriate way given its design. Legs are very good for environments that have stairs or other types of obstacles, and wheels are great for flat ground. The challenge is that when you make robots like these, they also become very difficult to program because they can move in very complicated ways. And so we are developing new types of computer algorithms that allow these robots to figure out how to move entirely on their own. There is a computer model that mimics some of the key ingredients that happen in the real world in terms of the dynamics and physical behavior. And within these simulated environments, the robot understands how to move. It understands how to optimize its movements to be able to achieve a certain goal. And then once it's figured these motions out in simulation, we can just execute them in the real world, and they transfer over quite well.
And shifting focus now, let's take a look at how commodities performed today. Now, gold prices eased slightly after a surge above $1,500 per ounce for the first time since April 2013 in the previous session. Now, the metal has risen more than 17% so far in 2019 and about $100 over the past week. That, of course, is a stellar run propelled by trade tension and an increasingly dovish shift in policy by central banks. Meanwhile, oil prices jumping more than $1 a barrel due to expectations that falling prices may lead to production cuts, coupled with a steadying of the yuan after a week of turmoil, which of course was spurred by the escalation of US-China trade tensions. Let's take a quick break now, still to come. We look at the growing trend of natural hair in Africa, breeding and how it's breeding business opportunities in Ghana.
The greatest journeys, the greatest sights, the greatest adventures.
Here in Kanata, this weir allows the locals to walk on water.
We're far more than just TV news. We're your passport to the wonders of Africa.
To bring you stories of struggle, survival and hope.
So let's explore. CGTN. See the difference.
And to Ghana now, the country hosted its first Miss Natural Hair contest for women to embrace their hair as it is growing. Now, as well as promoting natural hair, the contest celebrates the Year of Return, which focuses on the commemoration of 400 years after slave trade. CGTN's Nabil Ahmed Rufai reports from Accra.
Nana Ansuma decided to start wearing her hair naturally after suffering from burns on her scalp as a result of using different hair relaxers. She's now happy and proud to wear her hair kinky.
With my own hair, I can do different styles. This is a wash and go. Sometimes it shrinks and it's a little annoying, but people see it and they like it. And it gives you different looks. That's the fun about it.
Ansuma is one of many women taking up the trend of natural hair. And this expo is helping them find products which will work on different hair types. According to research firm Mintel, the black hair care market is worth over $2.5 billion.
Now you can see natural products are picking up. It's a huge market because you can see people are switching from their relaxing hair to the natural products.
With natural hair gaining popularity among Ghanaian women, the country has held its first Miss Natural Hair contest in Accra. It's a celebration of those who are keeping it natural. 6 contestants displayed their different hairstyles to the cheers and applause from the audience.
I'm very excited, and I never thought my hair could bring me this far, and I thank God for everything.
These natural hair contestants say taking part in this competition is not just about displaying their beautiful hair to the rest of the world, but to encourage Africans to love their hair.
They also say it's something tangled up in history, politics and race as Ghana marks its year of return in commemoration of 400 years after the slave trade.
This will be an annual event here in Ghana, and we want to embrace the natural beauty, the natural hair of the woman and the men.
Now that natural hair has hit the mainstream and beauty companies are eager to cash in, these African women say they also hope their history will be well preserved. Nabil Ahmed Rufai, CGTN, Accra, Ghana.
And now to the scourge of single-use plastic drinking straws. In Uganda, a company has discovered a natural replacement by making straws with sedge grass that can be washed and reused. Our Roots company aims to see plastic straws use in Ghana drop by about 45% over the next 5 years. It also wants to teach people how to make the straws at home. Here's CGTN's Brian Toussaint with this story.
The humble sedge grass grows naturally all over the world. It is traditionally harvested for thatching, weaving, and rope making. One entrepreneur in Uganda, however, has spotted it for modern applications.
These straws, long ago our ancestors used them for drinking the local brews called amalwa in Uganda. And these straws they used to get them from their gardens and other places. So we saw that it could be a great opportunity for us to fight single-use plastic straws with the plant-based ones.
Our Roots was founded in March of this year. It has 3 full-time staff members and 10 others who work part-time. The workers sort, cut, and sand down the sedge grass stalks and then prepare them for cleaning and drying.
We collect 2 types of the sedge grass, and one is thick and wider. This is why we call it the reusable straw, because you can be able to clean it many times as possible. And then one is thinner, which cannot allow you to be reusing it daily. So the moment you wash it badly, you can break it.
The eco-friendly business charges about 25 cents per straw, but gives a discount for bulk purchases.
We use 3 steps of sanitizing our straws. So we wash them and then boil into hot water. We bring them for sun drying, and then after sun drying, we take them into our microwave and then we pack, so they are ready to use.
This restaurant in Uganda's capital of Kampala is the first to stock the natural straws. It was looking to cut down on its plastic waste.
We've been seeing a lot of plastic waste pile up actually in our restaurant, among others, and really in plastics, with containers, with straws, and this is one of the forefront items which we see in a glass in front of a client every day, and really we thought this is a really great place to start.
Feedback from customers and staff has been positive.
This is the first time I'm seeing it. Before, I've used the paper straws and the plastic that are very common everywhere. But I would absolutely use them at home because I feel like you can clean them better, and I mean, it's natural.
It's estimated that plastic straws take 200 years to decompose, whereas these sedge grass straws decompose in only 3 weeks. Brian Toussaint, CGTN.
Well, before we go, let's take a quick look at how Africa's currencies performed today. South Africa's rand was weaker against major global currencies and, of course, the worst performing amongst emerging market currencies. Now, investors are digesting a heavy risk-off week in which it breached that 15 rand per dollar level. Meanwhile, Nigeria's naira quoted at 363.50 per dollar. Traders say the currency hit a new resistance level. That's amid scarce dollar liquidity as importers are unwilling to bid at weaker levels. Well, that's it for this edition of Global Business Africa. Remember, you can send your feedback to the contacts on your screen. You can also follow us on our various digital media platforms. From me, Uche Okoronkwo, and the rest of the team, thanks for watching.